The notice said the incident was discovered on the 11th of March. 4 paragraphs further down, in a sentence with no emphasis on it whatsoever, it said the unauthorized access was believed to have begun the previous October. So somebody had been inside for 5 months. The same letter opened by telling me the company takes the security of my personal information very seriously. The gap between those two dates is the most useful thing in the entire email. It is never in the first paragraph. I am not a lawyer and I have never written one of these notices. I run mobile data lines for a living, SIM cards sitting in modems, rented out by the month, which puts me close enough to the automation trade to know what a dumped credential list is worth and how fast somebody gets round to using it. That is the whole of my expertise here. The rest is that I receive a lot of these letters and I have got into the habit of reading them properly. The panic version first. Most breach notifications you receive will cost you nothing. That needs saying before anything else. Because the other reading, the one where every letter means your identity is being stolen this afternoon, takes people somewhere useless. They worry for a day, they do nothing specific, and by the fourth letter they have stopped opening them. The fourth letter is usually the one that matters. So the job here is triage. Spend the attention on the letters that earn it and close the rest in 30 seconds. Nobody in the security team wrote this. A breach notice is drafted by lawyers, reviewed by the communications people, and sent under a clock. In many jurisdictions, the regulator has to be told within 72 hours of discovery, and the affected individuals get told without undue delay after that. So the letter goes out while the forensics is still running. That one fact explains most of what is odd about the document you are holding. It also has to satisfy the regulator, and it has to survive being read back to them line by line in a courtroom 2 years later. Keeping you as a customer comes third, and you can feel where it sits. The reassurance is doing real work in that arrangement. It is the part written for you, and it is the part carrying no information. 3 sentences worth decoding. We have no evidence that your information has been misused. That sentence is true. It says they looked and did not find. What it leaves out is how far back they could look. Plenty of companies keep detailed access logs for 90 days. If the intrusion started 10 months earlier, the first 7 months are not being examined by anybody because there is nothing left to examine. No evidence of misuse and no ability to detect misuse produce the identical sentence. Next one. A limited number of accounts were affected. Limited is a word chosen instead of a number. The number exists. Somebody in that building knows it to the individual row, and it did not go into the letter, and there is really only one reason a number gets left out. The regulatory filing sometimes carries the count when the customer email does not. Worth 10 minutes if you care. Third, the incident was discovered on the 14th. Keep reading until you find when it started. The phrase to hunt for is some variation of believed to have occurred between, and it lives in the frequently asked questions page more often than in the email itself. The distance between those two dates is dwell time, and it is the closest thing to an honest severity score in the whole document. 2 days is a company that caught it. 11 months is data that has already been sold, resold, and folded into somebody's product before you heard the word breach. The tone tells you nothing. Here is the position I will defend. How worried you should be has no relationship at all to how the company sounds. A calm, well-drafted letter can carry a total dump of a customer database. An alarmed one can carry a misconfigured storage bucket that a researcher found and nobody else ever touched. Tone is a function of who reviewed the draft. Severity is a function of one thing, which is the list of fields that walked out of the door. The field list is the whole document. It usually sits about halfway down, often as a short bulleted list, sometimes only on the page the email links to. Find it. Everything above and below it is packaging. Then sort what you find into 4 groups because they carry genuinely different consequences, and the letter treats them as one paragraph, name and email address on their own. This is the common case and the mild one. The cost is that you are now a confirmed customer of that company, which is the missing ingredient in a good phishing email. Someone can now write to you about a service you actually use at the exact moment you are expecting to hear from them. There is a version of that mild case, which is not mild at all, where the company itself is the sensitive fact, a dating service, a clinic, a support group with a membership list, then a set of email addresses is the entire disclosure. No second field required. Passwords, in any form, the letter will say hashed, and hashed is a range rather than a state. A modern algorithm with a sensible cost setting means the attacker is spending real money per password. An old, unsalted scheme from a system built in 2011 means one consumer graphics card gets through the easy half of that database over a weekend. If the notice names the algorithm, go and look it up. If it does not name the algorithm, assume the unflattering answer, because the companies that did this part well are usually keen to tell you. Payment card numbers, awkwardly, the least bad item on the list. The number gets cancelled, a new card turns up in a week, and in most places, the liability for fraudulent charges sits with the bank. It is a nuisance. A nuisance has an exit. Date of birth, national identity numbers, passport numbers, addresses going back a decade. This group changes the shape of the problem because none of it rotates. I can change a password in 40 seconds. I cannot be born on a different day. And one people skip entirely. Security questions with the answers. Your mother's maiden name is a permanent credential you have handed to every bank you have ever used, and once it is in a dump, it is a permanent credential other people are holding too. What to actually do? In order, and the order matters because the second step is the one that gets abandoned. Find the field list, 2 minutes, and it decides everything after it. Change the password on that account, then run the reuse sweep. If that password or a close relative of it is sitting on any other account, change those as well, starting with the email address you use for password resets. I have taken apart why reuse is the actual mechanism behind most account takeovers in its own piece, and I am not going to argue it again here. Just run the sweep. It is the highest value 10 minutes in this entire process, and almost nobody does it, because the company's email never asks them to. Turn on two-factor on that account if it is off. A breach letter is a decent prompt for the thing you were going to get round to. Then the phishing window. For the next couple of months, treat any message about the breach as hostile. The people who buy these lists read the same news you do. They know a company has just told several 100,000 people to expect contact about their account. And that is a gift. A fake notification arriving behind a real one is a well-established move. Go to the site by typing the address yourself. Then the credit monitoring. Take it if it is free. There is no reason to turn down a free thing. But be clear about what has been handed to you. It is the cheapest item the company could have put in that envelope. It costs them a fraction of $1 per person at that volume, and it watches for damage after the fact. You get told once somebody has already opened an account in your name. The thing that actually stops that is a freeze on your credit file, where the bureau will not release your file to a new lender until you lift it. In a lot of countries, it is free and it takes about 10 minutes per bureau. Check what the equivalent is where you live, because it goes by different names. The company will not mention it, and the reason is that it is not theirs to give. The second email, now the part that should change how you read the first one. The follow-up notice that revises the numbers upward is common enough that I now assume one is coming. The pattern runs like this. The first letter says a limited number of accounts and lists 2 fields. 8 weeks later, a second notice says the review is complete. The affected population is larger than first estimated, and there is a third field on the list that was not there before. Nobody lied. The first letter was written 11 days into an investigation that took 4 months, under a legal clock that started the moment somebody noticed, which makes the first email an opening estimate. If the fields it lists are borderline, act as though the list is one item worse than what got printed, because that is the direction these corrections travel. I have never once seen a follow-up notice reduce the scope. The part I got wrong. For years I sorted these by severity, which sounds correct and had my effort in precisely the wrong place. The letters mentioning identity documents went in the urgent pile. The ones saying only your name and email address were involved got deleted on site. Then a phishing attempt landed about 6 weeks after one of the ones I deleted. It referenced the right service and it arrived inside the window where I would plausibly be hearing from them. I did not fall for it, and I think the reason was that I was sitting at a desk instead of holding a phone in a queue. Here is what I had backwards. The serious breach, the one with the identity documents on it, gave me almost nothing to do. Freeze the file, stay alert, except that the data is permanent. One afternoon of work and then it is out of my hands forever. The mild breach was the one where my own behavior was the only control left in the system. That was the letter that needed the attention, and it was the letter I had trained myself to bin. I also let the free monitoring from one of these lapse after 12 months and did not notice for the better part of a year, which tells you what I quietly thought it was worth. The sentence I look for now: past the apology, past the reassurance, past the offer. When did it start? When did they find out? And which fields were in the export? The letter is built so the first of those is the hardest one to locate, and that ordering was a decision somebody made. More privacy tools tested honestly at theprivacywire.com. Subscribe for privacy advice that is actually practical.